Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Family Ministry Moment. And for those of you who've been following along in our emails and things, you've noticed that I've been attaching parent guides and conversation starters and stuff that help us to talk to one another, communicate with each other, particularly if you've got kids at home or you want to communicate with folks in the community about some hot topics or some things you've noticed. I've attached some things underneath the devotional that happens in our newsletter. And I was scrolling through some of the stuff that I have not read through that newsletter, through all those parent guides and stuff. And one of the articles caught my eye that a few months back, Australia had started this process of banning social media for anyone under the age of 16. And it got me thinking because, we really feel that social media can be something super addictive and something that can be really detrimental to the lives and health of young people. And I know that, there have been a lot of social psychologists and lots of researchers who have said that it's so bad for a young person's mental and emotional health for them to be kind of on social media all the time. Being so constantly connected is a difficult thing. And we're just talking about that in Confirmation Sunday night, how this current generation is one of the most connected generations ever. We all know what's happening in all corners of the earth at any given time, which has caused anxiety to rise up, stress to rise up, and it's done that to not just our current generation of students, but to their families and to all of us, right? Because it kind of flows in and through everybody. And so when I was reading through the article, it made sense. I started researching some more behind why Australia thought it was a good idea, and a lot of folks supported it. And honestly, I don't think it's that bad of an idea. Do I think it has its challenges? For sure. But I also think we all should kind of take a break from too much social media or media in general. And I don't think most of us do a great job of that. I know most of us probably use social media to get away from our daily lives, especially if you're cooped up in an office all day. You probably check out by scrolling TikTok or Instagram or Twitter, or get on your Facebook and just kind of check out of whatever you're doing. I know the students do that at times at school. I hear about it, and these are normal behaviors for us, and it's, for some of us, it can be a way to just kind of free our minds and just kind of go somewhere else. But for some of us, it can become an addictive thing. And even a good thing can be super bad for you if used too much and used in a bad way. And so even social media can do that. Now, we all know that there's dangers to social media with our constant connection and just having the ability of never being able to check out of our constant connection with each other. When you get into a fight with an argument with a friend, it chases you on your phone until you're done. When you are really diving deep into a social problem, you can constantly be scrolling, looking stuff up about it and never take a break. And your mind wants to do that, right? The beautiful part about our brains is they're constantly seeking knowledge that excites us. Your mind is constantly wanting to be stimulated by stuff that gets you out of bed, that gets you excited. And whatever that thing is you're chasing after, your brain's going to want to fulfill. Now the question is what are you filling it with? Are you filling with stuff that's going to uplift you, that's going to bring you joy, right? I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the tree behind me, and it's got the fruit of the spirits on its limbs and the branches. And is it bringing you peace? Is it bringing you joy? Is it helping you grow in patience and kindness? Or is it something that's draining your spirit? Are you getting mired in all the problems of the day? Are you stuck in all the conflict that's happening in our world? And I'm not saying we don't need to be connected. I'm not saying we don't have to be in tune. What I am saying is we have to make sure we check out and take care of ourselves. If we're going to try to be good Christians, if we're going to try to be people who love our neighbors, we have to make sure we take care of our mental health, and we take care of the mental health of our family and friends around us. And I've always talked about, anxiety and stress on these videos, and it's just a reminder that, this generation is one of the most anxious generations. That means their parents are one of the most anxious groups. We need to be taking care and loving each other, and so my encouragement is to make sure that we continue to do that. And the scriptures talk about that pretty regularly. In fact, one of them comes to mind in the book of James. The scripture I wanted to look at today is going to actually be found in the book of James. Going to chapter 1, verse 13. It says, "No one who is tested should say, 'God is tempting me.' This is because God is not tempted by any form of evil, nor does he tempt anyone. Everyone is tempted by their own cravings. They are lured away and enticed by them. Once those cravings conceive, they give birth to sin, and when sin grows up, it gives birth to death. And I mean, at church, we talk about this all the time. How, if whatever you're putting your roots in, that's what you're going to sow, right? It's whatever you're spending your time in, that's the fruit you're going to produce. And so, the scriptures tell us in James that God's not tempted. That God had to separate themselves from temptation. And we find that out from the very beginning of the scriptures, right? God had to separate themselves from the Garden of Eden. And so it's the same that is true for us, right? If there's certain things in our lives that become temptation, become just bad habits, bad things, we got to learn to give that up. I know during this season of Lent, we're not talking as much about giving up as we are about rising up. And one of the things we can start to do is think about the habits that we can create in our lives that help us grow closer to God, that help us to love our neighbors and love God more efficiently, more effectively, and in a better responsive way. When James is talking about how we need to avoid the temptations. Now, I know for some of us, like, social media may not be a huge temptation, but for those of us who are addicted to that dopamine hit that comes from constantly scrolling TikTok or getting on your Snap or constantly texting or always looking at your messages, that's normal for a lot of people. I know a lot of folks who check, their Twitter and stuff regularly, and they're in that world. And some of us don't understand it, but there's a lot of us who deal with it. And the reality is it's really addictive. And for you, it may not be social media. For you, it might be, I'm, gonna be drinking a lot of coffee or watching a lot of Netflix, right? Even some of those simple things can be pretty habit forming. And though it can be good, it can also be kind of an addiction for some of us. And is it really helping, or does it get to the point where it begins to harm us on the inside? Where it's no longer just fulfilling that need of perhaps community, or feeling the need of an artistic release, or just a sense of freedom, getting a chance to rest. But sometimes those things can even be too much for us, right? And so how do we balance our lives out? Right, the scriptures in James is telling us, don't give in to things that cause temptation that eventually leads to sin, right? And James goes as far as to say that leads to death. And we know that when the scriptures talk about sin leading to death, that Jesus had to pay that price for us. What James is saying is that death is the fact that Spirit, that God can no longer be in our presence when that happens. Now, we know as United Methodists, we believe that the Spirit is always working in and through us. And so we firmly believe that God, even though we may not be wanting to, we may not be paying attention, God's Spirit is there ready and waiting to support us in our journey to continue to grow closer to God. Right? It's a beautiful part of God's grace. And so my encouragement to you is to think about ways during this season that you can rise up and continue to grow closer in your faith. And how are you doing that with the people around you? Are you supporting your friends, supporting your family in doing that as well? I don't know if you can do that in your workplace or in your classrooms, but I know for sure that many of you can do that in your families. How are you supporting one another and making that happen, right? Because when you isolate yourself, it is easy to fall into temptations. And if you surround yourself with the people who don't lift you up, it's totally easy to fall into temptations. But are you supporting yourself in your families and lifting each other up and creating spaces where you guys can grow closer to each other and grow closer to God? And I hope that you can grow closer to each other at church as well. I hope to connect with y'all at church on Sundays, Sunday mornings at 9 and at 11, and during Sunday school and our youth group. And that's a great way for us to continue to make sure we hold each other accountable and show up and be present and create that sense of community that helps us grow together. So this is Manu. Hope to see you this Sunday.